about this, but I'll put the Federal Reserve back in its place and say you have one job: stabilize the U.S. dollar, period. See, if the dollar's wildly fluctuating, here's the problem. If the number of minutes in an hour fluctuated, none of us would be here at the same time. Well, the same thing applies in an economy. When the dollar is that volatile, we don't invest in the right projects. That also addresses the economic growth problem that we have. So between unshackling U.S. energy, between putting people back to work, reforming the U.S. Fed, I would also say reviving meritocratic hiring policies in corporate America, we unleash GDP growth in this country over 5%. And even at 3%, our other fiscal problems become small. And I think that's something that can unite us rather than the debate about tax increases or spending cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Let's just grow the size of the pie instead of arguing about how we divvy it up. That's my solution.
Vivek Ramaswamey. All right, man, it's always good to see you. I'm so happy to talk to you again. So you don't want 23-year-olds to vote. You say you want to tear apart permanent Washington. Do you really want to be president?
Yeah. So I gotta take issue with that first one.
Okay.
I want them to vote, my man. I do. That's the whole point. And I want Washington to go back to being what George Washington and the founding fathers envisioned it to be, which is 3 branches of government, not 4. So I'm for these things, but I have a very different path to getting there than the path that led us to where we are right now, which is young people telling, you probably saw this story, now saying that they would rather hold on to TikTok than their right to vote. A majority of young people in a survey literally just said that's what they would prefer. They would hold on to their social media accounts and TikTok sooner than their right to vote.
Swamy went into Southside Chicago recently. It was about a few weeks ago. He held a town hall meeting there and also went into a local barbershop and had a conversation with a few of the people who were there. For those of you who don't know who Ramaswamy is, and a lot of you still don't know who he is, he's an Ohio native and he's a billionaire biotech entrepreneur who has been making the rounds. I'm sure even if you don't know who he is, you've probably seen his face and seen him on a few platforms.
What do you feel about people who say that Governor Abbott is using the market to split the profit?
So to tell you, I don't like partisan politics very much, but I'm going to speak truth. It's Chicago that was calling itself a sanctuary city, right? Your mayor boasts to the country that we're a sanctuary, that we're the ones who are going to make people come. So I don't blame, in this case, the person who's saying that I'm protecting the residents in my state. If somebody else wants to say that they're a sanctuary city, and then people actually send them, I think it's your mayor that bears accountability for that. I'm not blaming him for the sake of blaming him. I'm blaming him. I think that the citizens of this city can hold him accountable to say that, you know what, how about you look after the people who actually lived here and voted for you and pay taxes here and actually live here and whose families have lived here, rather than solving somebody else's problem somewhere else. By doing a deal that I think has a very good chance of being our last best chance to pull Putin apart from Xi Jinping and dissolve the Sino-Russian military alliance. So that's, of course, a much deeper discussion, but to me, that's not anti-Ukraine, that's pro-America.
Would you cut off military aid to Ukraine in the course of setting that up? Or are you one of those I can solve it in 24 to 48 hour guys like former President Trump?
I would give myself 72 hours to sit in a room effectively with Vladimir Putin and the other parties at the table and negotiate a deal. The basic terms of the deal, and of course we would get the best deal we can, but the basic gist is no further aid to Ukraine, permanent commitment by NATO not to admit Ukraine, that the U.S. would backstop. But in return, Putin exits his 2001 Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Cooperation with China and the 2022 No Limits Partnership, moves all nuclear weapons out of Kaliningrad, the region that borders Poland, and also removes any Russian military presence from the Western Hemisphere, including Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, and so on. And I think that restores a trilateral international order instead of the bilateral one that we now have that favors China. It also, I would restore normal economic relations with Russia. Putin does not relish being Xi Jinping's little brother in that relationship. And so in a certain way, Hugh, it's the reverse of what Nixon did in 1972 with Mao. We did not have trust for Mao Zedong then, just as we should not have trust for Putin now. But we can trust each of them to follow their self-interest. Mao was Brezhnev's little brother. Nixon pulled him out of that relationship. Putin's like the new Mao. I think we can actually pull them out of their partnership with China. And I think that the Sino-Russian military alliance is the single greatest military threat and foreign policy threat that the United States faces today. And this is also how we deter war with Taiwan, with China in the context of Taiwan. Because Xi Jinping's bet, effectively, is that with Russia in his back, that's the largest nuclear stockpile in the world, super EMP capabilities, hypersonic missile capabilities. He says with that military alliance with China, Xi Jinping's bet is that the U.S. won't want to go to war with two different allied nuclear superpowers at the same time. If the West restores normal economic relations with Russia, he has less of a relationship and less of a reason to be in that relationship with Xi Jinping. He also does not enjoy being that little brother in the relationship. I think we're working within a window where we can actually get that deal done.